All right, so even though I am comparing two handguns that are extremely similar, there are obviously some differences, not just in their physical size and characteristics, but also in their round count capacity. The SIG Sauer P365 a year ago revolutionized the world with 10 round magazines that are so small, literally the gun was built around it. Springfield Armory returned fire by saying, no, we can pack 11 rounds into a magazine just about the same size. And you can see, if I put these magazines here sort of back to back, the Springfield magazine is a little bit taller, and it is about the same width, almost exactly the same width. So with just a little tiny bit of extra height, Springfield packed that extra round in there. So I've loaded both of the magazines up to their capacity. So that is 10 rounds for the SIG and 11 rounds for the Springfield. You can also get a 12 round magazine for the SIG. So I've got 12 rounds in the 12 round magazine. The Hellcat also comes with an extended 13 round magazine, and I've got 13 rounds in that. So let's start out with all of that. And also something I thought quite fitting for this comparison, a great way to start out, SIG Sauer's 365 ammo. This is the ammo designed for carry, small carry guns like the P365. And like the Elite Performance ammo, it's available in both a ball and a jacketed hollow point. This is the ball ammo, and the cool thing about it is they both are rated the same in terms of velocity and pressure and all of those things. So you can practice with the ball ammo. When you switch over to the jacketed hollow points, it feels exactly the same. SIG provided the ammo to the channel, for which I am appreciative. Let's start out with the P365. That target is 13 yards away. Oh, I pulled that one. I felt it. Okay, well, there we go. Hey, don't judge me, guys. I'm just warming up. Hellcat now, 12 rounds. Hellcat feels jumpier. Okay, back to the P365 with the 12 round magazine. If you see something sticking off the bottom and you go, what the heck is that? That's my little Mantis X10 Picatinny rail thingy. Okay, 365 through the 365. Okay, I think I'm starting to settle into my groove here a little bit. 13 rounds of 365 in the Hellcat. Okay, I think I'm warmed up. Okay, for those of you who prefer numbers and statistics, here are those on these two guns. Of course, they are both 9mm handguns, and they are very, very similar, with only very small differences between the two. Starting with the barrel length, just 1/10 of an inch separates them, and even 3 inches for the Hellcat, 3.1 inches for the P365. However, the overall length is contra to that, with the Hellcat being 6 inches in overall length and the P365 being just 5.8 inches. The height of both of the handguns really depends on which magazine you have inserted in it and which base plate that magazine has on it, but the published numbers for the Hellcat are 4 inches even with the flush magazine, the way we see it here, 4.5 inches with the extended 13 round magazine. The P365 is 4.3, so kind of splits the difference. Hellcat weighs 18.3 or 18.6, again depending on which empty magazine is in it. Sig Sauer P365 is 17.8, and I'm presuming that's with the standard 10-round mag. Both of these guns have a very nice finish. I'm a fan of both. Springfield Armory's Melanite finish is super high quality. I've liked it for a long time. And I could say the same for the Nitron the Sig Sauer uses as well. One difference to note is that Nitron on the Sig is over a stainless steel slide. The slide of the Hellcat is carbon steel. Both pistols offer extremely good sights. Really comes down to personal preference and what you like and what works best for you. Hellcat has that U-dot configuration with a blacked out rear sight that I like, with the sort of a highlighted U, and then a bright front sight that contains not only the illumination paint but also the tritium insert. The P365 has those extremely good X-ray sights from Sig Sauer with that beautiful green circle out front and the tritium insert in there as well. They both come with 2 magazines. The Hellcat comes with one 11-round magazine and one 13-round magazine. The 11-round magazine comes with 2 base plates. It has the Pinky extension base plate that you do not see at the moment, and it has the flush base plate that you do. And the 13-round magazine is the +2 extended magazine. The P365 comes with 2 10-round magazines. Extended magazines in 12 rounds and 15 rounds are available. And of course the published capacity is the lowest number available with the standard magazine. So that's going to be 10 rounds in the Sig and 11 in the Hellcat. Thickness is extremely close too. You've got to really read your caliper if you want to see the difference. But those numbers can be a little bit misleading because they're going to measure across the controls on the slide, not so much where you hold the gun. And as you can see, there's only 0.6 of an inch that separate the two in thickness, so virtually identical. But again, that's across the controls on the slide. That's not where your hand goes when you hold it. Trigger numbers are fairly close, but in favor of the Sig if you prefer them lighter. Hellcat measured 5 pounds 14 ounces on my Lyman digital gauge. The Sig came out to 5 pounds 1 ounce. Just an opinion grip index, which is, of course, if you follow the channel, you know that's just a made-up reference index number. That number is 2.68 for the Hellcat, and that is a product of the trigger reach and the width of the gun at the point where the web of your hand is going to be. P365's grip index is 2.56, so it is a little bit smaller, and that is how my hand feels when I'm on it. I can tell when I pick up each of these guns that the Sig is a little bit smaller. If you concealed carry, you know that one of the most important dimensions of a handgun, if not the most important, is the height. And that is the height from the very bottom of the magazine to the top of the slide, maybe even to the top of the sight. Because that's the part that's going to print, that's the part you really have to work to conceal. You can see these two handguns side by side here in terms of height. They both have their smallest magazine with the flush base plate installed. It's hard to do an exact comparison because the grips are different angles. You can see that right there. They sort of go off in opposite directions in terms of the angles. So the height is going to reflect that, whether you measured in the front or whether you measured in the back. But if you look at it from the very back, and I tend to be more concerned with the back because that's the part that's going to print, you can see that the Hellcat, which is on the right, is a bit taller. The thickness of the two guns are so close as to really be inconsequential. They're both right around that 1 inch mark. Now the length, which is really not a very important number, and in this case is almost completely insignificant because it's very, very little difference. You can see right there. The Hellcat is a little bit longer, but again, inconsequential. If you want to look at them from the top, there are the two guns from the top. You can see the length, and you can see that they are essentially the same width in terms of the slide. If I put them here together where the grip tangs are at the same height, you can see that the bore axis for both of these guns is also very similar. Maybe a slight advantage to the Hellcat in terms of it being a bit lower, but again, we're probably talking maybe a couple of tenths of an inch. Can't be much. So these guns are extremely similar in many, many ways. All right, well, you know what time it is now. Time for me to play for you the song of my people. All right, let's take a look at these two pairs of sights for side-by-side comparison. On the left, you have the SIG P365, and on the right, the Springfield Armory Hellcat. They both offer extremely good sights. I like them both a lot, and I wouldn't complain about either of them. I've liked the SIG X-ray sights that are on this P365 for a long time, and I really like the sights that are on this Hellcat. It really just comes down to personal preference. Some people may or may not prefer that U notch that you can see right there, and some people may or may not prefer that 3-dot setup that SIG offers. SIG chose green for their front sight. Springfield Armory chose yellow for their front sight. But they both have tritium in the center, so they both will glow at night under their own power. Now, one big difference is the rear sight on the SIG also contains two small dots that are also tritium powered, so you will have a 3-dot sight picture in total darkness with the SIG. The rear sight on the Springfield does not have tritium, and it also does not have any photoluminescence of any kind, so it is going to be completely invisible in darkness and may be difficult to see in low light. So I suppose there's a low light advantage, certainly a darkness advantage, to the SIG, but otherwise, again, these two sight pictures are very, very good. I like them both, and I would have a hard time saying that one is better than the other in terms of shootability. All right, let me put some on paper. I'm not going to call this accuracy testing so much because I'm not going to use a rest or any of that, but I am going to try and do my most bestest with each one, and I'm going to shoot the 365 jacketed hollow point ammo. So this is essentially the same thing I was shooting when I warmed up, except now I'm shooting hollow points instead of full metal jacket. So basically just see if there's one that I shoot better than the other. Okay, that was the SIG. Now on to the Hellcat. 10 rounds of each, by the way. Alrighty. Well, I can't say that I mind either of those groups, but I don't know. I would have said at first I thought I was shooting the Hellcat a little bit better, but I think if I measure those two groups, they're about the same. P365's trigger is metal and it does not contain any kind of a integral trigger safety. All of the safeties of the P365 are internal components. The Hellcat is a polymer trigger with a safety blade in the center, and that blade is what we're used to. It has to be depressed before the rest of the trigger shoe can be moved. So if you have a preference one way or another, that is certainly a key difference between the two. Both guns have forward and rear cocking serrations. They're both good. They're both very practical and useful. Of course, the Hellcat gives us that wraparound top serration on the rear that the P365 does not. Both of these handguns have a loaded chamber indicator. You can see there. They are both the peep sight style indicator where you can look through and see the case underneath. So you see that brass or you see that nickel case down through that hole, and you know there's a round chambered. Not only should you bring your carry gun out regularly to the range, well, I mean, hopefully you're carrying it anyway, right? But you should bring it out and shoot it fairly regularly at the range to stay proficient and familiar with it. But I think you also should make sure that every time you do have a range session with your carry gun, spend at least a magazine or two shooting it one hand only. Now, you don't necessarily have to shoot weak hand only, although I think that is a good idea to practice that. But you should at least shoot strong hand only for a couple magazines each and every time, because statistically a very high percentage of self-defense shootings occur with just one hand. P365 shoots well with just one hand. Let's see how the Hellcat does. I don't know, that felt better to me actually. I felt like I had more control with one hand and the Hellcat. Now that's with the extended magazine, so it gave me a nice full grip, but I felt like my sights were on target better and recovered quicker. Just goes to show. Both guns have a small section of accessory rail. I'm not going to say Picatinny rail because I'm not sure if they're both two Picatinny specs, but they both have accessory rail. However, I'm going to definitely favor by a long ways the Hellcat in that respect because it is useful. The SIGS is very unuseful. It's very proprietary. As you can see, it is not open in the front. I'm going to show you that closer. So the P365's accessory rail is closed off in the front, meaning you can't slide something on. It's got to be something that can clamp on, basically, instead of slide on. Whereas the Hellcat is fully open. You can slide something on or clamp something on. So there's definitely a lot more flexibility with the accessory rail on the Hellcat than on the SIG. What usually works for me best when I'm doing a comparison with two handguns is just to sort of go back and forth between the two. Same number of rounds, same ammo and all of that. And I try to keep everything consistent, and I just want to get a good feel between the two guns for the points that I like and dislike on each of them. My goal is to present that information to you without a whole lot of bias. So if I really don't like something, I'm going to tell you I really don't like it, but I'm going to try and tell you why or what I would like instead. I'm not going to just go, this sucks. I'm going to say this sucks because whatever. So I'm just going to go back and forth for a minute with a couple magazines through each of the guns and tell you what I think as I shoot. So first off, you saw that slide close using the slide stop, slide release button. That's an important thing to me. I really gripe about guns that don't function with that control. Both of these do well. In that respect, the P365 is smaller in the hand, there's no doubt about it. but I find it feels slightly less jumpy to me. Now I will tell you, I have a Talon grip on this, and it's that new Talon Pro material, and it does make a difference. So in all fairness, I really, really love the sights on the P365. The other thing that I like is, even with the flush 10-round magazine, my pinky has a home. My hand has full grasp of the gun. I'll show you in a minute that on the Hellcat, it doesn't with the base magazine. Okay, so here's the Hellcat now, and here's the 11-round magazine. Again, remember, the Hellcat is just ever so slightly taller, and the magazine is just ever so slightly longer. But my pinky doesn't fit, so I've got nowhere for my pinky to go except to curl underneath. So I know for some folks that's a huge thing. It really bothers a lot of folks, and for some folks it's not that big a deal. I'm kind of in between, but I just want to point that out. And my hands are small to medium. I wear like a medium-sized glove for reference. So if that's going to bother you, you might want to think about that. And of course, there is the extended magazine, and I also want to point out that I deliberately put the flush base plate on this magazine because that's what I have on the Sig mags, and I wanted to compare apples to apples. If I put the pinky extension base plate back on this magazine, it doesn't change the capacity, but it greatly changes the feel of the handgun. So the caveat is, I'm not crazy about how short it is with this magazine in it, but that's easily changed by putting the other base plate back on. Heavier trigger, and again, it does feel a little bit jumpier to me, for whatever reason. Slightly higher bore axis, perhaps. Maybe it's just because it doesn't have a Talon on it. That would be easy to fix. So the trigger pull is definitely heavier. There's no doubt about that on the Hellcat. Texture is good, but it does jump around in my hand a little bit more because the other one, as I keep mentioning, has the Talon grip on it. So that's unfair. I just want to point that out. I might like the Sig sight picture a little bit more just because I'm old and I have a hard time adapting to change. But you know, the U at the bottom of this one leaves you can sort of drift your front sight around inside that curved U and still feel like you're in there. Whereas when you've got 3 dots to line up, they're either lined up or they're not. So I think, for me, mentally, when I'm taking a sight picture, I feel like it's easier for me to be more precise with the 3 dots. Sig Sauer does offer a 15-round magazine for the P365. It also fits the P365 XL. You just have to swap out the base plate. I only have it loaded to 10, so right now I'm just loading everything to 10 rounds, but for feel, you can certainly see no matter how big your hands are, you're going to be able to get your meat hooks around that guy. The extended magazine for the Hellcat is only 13 rounds. However, it does come with the gun. Sig Sauer only gives you 2 10-round magazines. So it's always a good news, bad news thing, isn't it? And the 13-round magazine is also a very good full hand grip on this pistol. Let's see if that makes any difference on how it feels to me when I shoot. It does actually. The gun doesn't feel quite as jumpy now that I've got my pinky wrapped around there. and I didn't have to really shift my grip or readjust my grip while I was shooting. So it does make a difference. And I'm certain that if I put the pinky extension back on the 10 round magazine or the 11 round magazine, that would probably feel a lot more comfortable too. The controls are very similar on both of these handguns. Neither handgun is ambidextrous. They are both made for the right-handed shooter, with the slide stop, slide release being right here on each one, and the magazine release being right here. I think in both cases the magazine release is reversible, so it could be made to accommodate a left-handed shooter a little better. And additionally, both of the takedown levers are here, and they go in different directions, but they operate the same way. So the functionality of the takedown is also very similar between these two guns. Both guns have a dual recoil spring assembly. Easiest way to see that is to show them this way with the slides locked back so we can see them telescoped out. They're both very similar. One big difference is the Sig Sauers is completely steel, even the inner rod. The inner rod on the Springfield Armory is polymer. Not a real big deal, but a distinction. Another key distinction on the Springfield Armory is that it extends past the end of the dust cover and past the end of the barrel. And this pad out here, and actually has texture on it, is what's referred to as a standoff. And the idea is that you could have a contact situation where the muzzle of this gun is pushed up against something, and this standoff here at the end of this guide rod is going to prevent the slide from being pushed out of battery. That's the theory, but in reality, you know, if you're pushing it against something soft, it's likely to give in this respect and still push the slide out of battery. But that's the idea. If you held it up against something like a wall, you're okay. A person, probably not as much. Of course, you know, when I do a head-to-head, it's not always about something winning and something losing, right? In fact, a friend just stopped by and asked what I was working on, and I told her, and she said, which one's winning? And I said, well, it's really not about the winning or losing, unless that's pretty obvious. It's about comparing and contrasting. So that's really the point of it. So the Sig Sauer P365 has been my carry gun for probably over a year now, definitely over a year now. And so there's probably a little bit of an unfair advantage to the Sig in terms of just my familiarity with it. I've shot probably close to a couple thousand rounds through this gun. So I'm extremely familiar with it, and I know exactly what to expect, how it performs and all of that. So there could be a little bit of an unfair advantage in favor of the Sig just because of that. So the Hellcat I haven't shot near as much. I just recently did my initial review of it and now this comparison. So I haven't got nearly as many rounds through it, but it is a very intuitive little gun to shoot, and it's a really nice little gun to shoot. The biggest disadvantage I noticed today was the absence of a Talon grip on the Hellcat, and I was really feeling the difference between the two there. So again, that's a bit of an unfair comparison in that respect, but it is what it is, right? So if you're wondering why I don't yet have a Talon grip on this Hellcat, it's because I do not own this gun. Springfield Armory sent me this gun as a T&E to do a review with, and I don't own it, so it's not mine to modify. And if I do want to keep this gun, I'll have to buy it, contrary to a lot of popular beliefs. People who have YouTube gun channels, at least most of the ones I know, don't get guns given to them for free. So if I want this gun, I will have to purchase it from Springfield Armory. And I'm very likely to do just that, because I do like this little gun. And that might be the best way to wrap this up, is to say that both of these guns are extremely good choices for concealed carry. These are, I will say, the two best choices right now on the market for a small 9mm concealed carry handgun, and I don't think you could go wrong with either one. I think it really is going to come down to a personal opinion. Which one do you like better? Which one do you feel like you shoot better? That's important. The They're both made by extremely reputable, good manufacturers, and they're both going to be extremely durable and reliable. I don't have any concerns in that respect. So the capacity is in favor of the Springfield Armory Hellcat with 11 rounds in the flush magazine and 13 in the extended versus 10 rounds in the flush magazine and 12 or 15 in its various extended magazines. But you do pay a little bit of a price and size for that. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. The sights are different, but again, personal preference. They are both extremely excellent quality sights and very good sight pictures. Okay, so there you go. There's my comparison between the Sig Sauer P365 and the Springfield Armory Hellcat. And for those of you who do get really annoyed because I didn't pick a winner, I will tell you this. The Sig Sauer P365 came to the range today as my carry gun, and it's leaving the range today as my carry gun. And for the foreseeable future, I don't see that changing.